As Reverend Barbara Wells 10 Hove explains, the principles are not dogma or doctrine, but rather a guide for those of us who choose to join and participate in Unitarian Universalist religious communities. And we now begin our worship with a prelude. We have a tradition in our fellowship of lighting a chalice as we begin our service. Robin, would you lead us in the words? Thank you.
Absolutely. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope in celebration of the life we share together.
Thank you. So the dome, this very space, was designed by Buckminster Fuller for the Southern Illinois University campus in 1971, and this year marks the center's 50th anniversary. Also in 1971, I was an incoming freshman, and I remember the dome well, and the live cougar that was caged right over here that would walk around the campus. And students painting and repainting the rock in the middle of the quad, and waiting in long, long lines to get these antiquated computer cards that took care of your registration for classes. And I remember events in this very space, like lectures and meetings, and I seem to remember a memorial service or two and a workshop. And more recently, maybe 10 years ago, I was performing in a reading of the Vagina Monologues, standing right where I am now. So this space is very familiar to me and very comfortable, and it embodies many of the attributes that resonate with Unitarian Universalism. And I always wanted to see how it would feel to have the congregation come here. So you're coming along with me on my bucket list item. Also at the Moose Lodge to have one, and we've done that, haven't we? we had a service at the Moose Lodge, chicken and church. So I'm very happy that so many of you have joined today and appreciate this space with me. Welcome. And now we'll sing our first hymn, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. The words are printed in your order of service. Please stand as you are able. You may be seated. However and wherever we meet, we find communion with each other. May our faith be strengthened, and may our practice of loving kindness enrich all of our lives. Ben Lauder serves as the Center Director of the Buckminster Fuller designed Center for Spirituality and Sustainability. It's quite a mouthful. Ben's been working with the center since 2013, and he functions as a liaison between Southern Illinois University and the estate of Buckminster Fuller. He also serves on the board of directors of the organization that manages the Buckminster Fuller's historic dome home that's in Carbondale, Illinois, where Fuller himself lived from 1960 to 1971. In addition to promoting the legacy of Buckminster Fuller for the purpose of fostering unity and reverence of nature, Ben also works as an artist, creating cultural wayfinding totems. Did I say that right? His exhibits have traveled all over the United States and in New York, Los Angeles, and Miami, and his artwork is in museum collections as well as notable collections of Will and Jada Pinkett Smith and renowned musician Brandon Boyd. And if you're a Facebook friend of his, you get to see sometimes when you're traveling around and what he's been working on, all these intricate wood mosaics, I call them. Myth, Math, and Magic is Ben's current series of artwork, and it comprises of mosaic assemblages built from transformed 20th century cultural artifacts. And he cleanses these artifacts with white sage while deconstructing them into triangular components that reference the sustainability of the dome. He states the meeting of these artifacts and the embodied energy within them has been transmuted into new objects that signify the aspirations of our ancestors and place them as signs at the crossroads of the present moment. So please join me in welcoming Ben Lauder.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to see you all here, and I hope you feel at home. You definitely should, because this building's designer and creator, Buckminster Fuller, was an 8th generation Unitarian. Even though he may have not attended regularly, he was in a long family tradition of Unitarians. His grandfather, Arthur Buckminster Fuller, was actually a Unitarian minister. And they are closely affiliated with the Harvard Divinity School. That was also a Unitarian-led school for a time period, and it's changed over the years. But the Unitarianism runs deep with Buckminster Fuller's family tradition. One of his aunts, his father's older sister, yeah, I got that right, or his grandfather's older sister, Margaret Fuller, was also in that same milieu, in that same tradition. She was America's first feminist. She was an abolitionist. She was the editor of The Dial, which was the Transcendentalists newspaper, where another famous Unitarian, Ralph Waldo Emerson, contributed to frequently, Henry David Thoreau. But in a lot of ways, she was the matriarch of that whole movement, and it owes a lot to this whole kind of idea of that undergirds Unitarianism, this finding unity and truth across all kinds of different faith traditions. She was an expert in mythology, and by all rights should have been teaching at Harvard in her lifetime, but that would have been the early 1800s, and yeah, which informs a lot of the reasons why she became a feminist, right? And she matched wits a lot of times with Emerson in drawing rooms and places where men and women could actually get in dialogue together. And by all accounts of people who were in those, she may have bested him most of the time. But she's an extraordinary woman, and Buckminster Fuller actually mentioned in one of his books that she had the biggest influence on his life. Although she passed away in a shipping accident off of the coast, off Fire Island, and died tragically with her baby after coming back from Italy, where she was actually in the Italian resistance movement with Garibaldi. And so she was an extraordinary woman that, Buckminster Fuller got to be inspired by, posthumously. She passed away in, I think it was 1843. He was born 1895. And Monday, July 12th, is actually his birthday, tomorrow. I think, if my math is right, it'd be like 126 or something like that if he was alive. But I got to actually speak with Bucky's grandson Friday, still going through finalizing a donation that they're sending to SIU and the center here, and finalizing details around the appraisal of that. But I asked, was Bucky practicing Unitarian? And even though Jamie, his grandson, had traveled around with him during his life on speaking engagements, he wasn't aware that he attended regularly, but he was definitely influenced by Unitarian beliefs. Again, this place that we're in here today is really, really exceptional to his legacy. Today it's referred to as the Fuller Dome, the building is. Originally in 1971, it was the Religious Center, and it came about from, while the campus was new, a group of mainly Christian-based faith organizations from Edwardsville felt like this was too far removed from town and that students wouldn't have a place of worship. So they sought to have a religious center added to the architectural plan that was done by the famous architectural group HOK Architects. But where you park today, Visitor Parking Lot B, was where the original religious center was going to be, just a rectilinear building. But since that was an add-on to their plan, they never quite got the money together for it. And Bucky provided this as a solution for getting the religious center built. But he had been actually envisioning this building for decades. He referred to it as a geoscope. The building style itself is a geodesic dome, which he patented that in 1954. And it's all about using the least amount of materials to enclose a volume of space. He was driven his entire life by seeing what we could do more and more and more with less and less and less impact on the environment and use of materials. He felt that through design science that everyone could live in a high degree of abundance if we just managed what we had correctly. But this geodesic dome, he also had been envisioning for, like I said, decades as a geoscope. He envisioned a translucent miniature Earth that would be 40 feet in diameter and you would set it over a line of longitude so that you could turn or rotate the miniature Earth's line of longitude to match the one on the actual planet, so that when you were standing in the middle of it and you were looking out, you could see your place in the world, and since it was translucent, you could see the world's place in the universe. So that effort is squarely within this tradition of using architecture as a way of mediating our human-level relationship with big universal patterns that are kind of hard to get our minds around. But, through the use of worship spaces and architecture that embody those bigger patterns and bring them down to a human scale, it provides an opportunity to connect with that in that space. So this one, auspiciously enough, sits over the Earth's 90th longitudinal meridian. It bisects right through the middle of the room. So this glass corner right here is the north end of the 90th longitudinal meridian, and the south corner is right there with that metal corner back there. So it runs diagonally through the middle of the room. So before you leave, you have to stand right. She's right on it. Yeah, that's right. Yep. So with it being a miniature Earth, the oceans are tinted blue and the land masses are clear. We have these sunshades up right now to help reduce the solar gain in here in the summer because it can get pretty warm. But you can still kind of see through them. And when you're in the center, you're on the 90th meridian and you look straight up, that pentagon-shaped vent overhead is Edwardsville. It's where you're actually standing. So you have the vantage point of looking at where you're standing on the planet in that moment from the core of the planet. And like I said, since it's clear, and say it was night, and it was a clear night, and the stars were out, if your head is in the exact center, all the stars that you would see in the actual sky are in zenith over that location. So like if you look through North Africa, which is behind me here, say, if you look through Cairo and your head was in the exact center, like where the core of the Earth is, your line of sight to the stars that you would be looking at through this lens of Cairo, those stars are in zenith over that location on the actual planet. So it's a pretty profound metaphor for our connection with big universal principles. The other very auspicious and kind of synchronistic aspect of the 90th meridian in this location is that before Buckminster Fuller patented his geodesic dome patent in 1954, he patented this map, which is it's called the Dymaxion map. So this was, he started working on this in the 40s. It was in Life magazine, I think, in 1943, before he even got the patent. But his goal with this was to create a map that didn't distort the land masses. It bothered him that kids were sitting in classrooms looking at the standard Mercator map, where you have, everything around the poles is stretched to the point that somewhere like Greenland looks like it's the size of North Africa. And he felt like if we were going to be able to get together, unify, pool our resources, we at least need to have an accurate picture of the world. And that's probably, a lot of that's informed by he grew up on an island off the coast of Maine, did a lot of sailing. He was in the Navy in World War I. So his idea of having good charts and navigation to know where we're at, know where we've been, and be able to plot and figure out where we want to go was kind of a good metaphor for understanding his life. That it went beyond just sailing, but he even, like mentioned on here, saw the planet as a vessel that we're all on together. And in the way that you would, it's voyaging through space currently, in the way that you would be on a ship out in sea, you need to know where you're at and where you want to go. You need to inventory your resources accurately, and you need to work together. You need to cooperate. You need to get in alignment with natural forces. You have to work with nature rather than against nature. And that really informs his entire legacy around that, what he probably learned while he was sailing around his Bear Island off the coast of Maine. But so he took the sphere of the planet to create this map without distortion, just an accurate picture of the world, and he broke it up into a series of lines drawing around it. And then from that point, he turned it into an icosahedron, which is a 12-sided figure, one of the Platonic solids, which is every vertice and every angle on that shape is the same. It's one of 5 three-dimensional objects that are that way. The icosahedron, when it unfolds, it turns into this odd shape, which is, it's a very different orientation, but it's more accurate. And as far as around ideas of unity and connectivity, this map does a lot to kind of dissolve national boundaries and things that inform differences of people. This looks like one island, one landmass surrounded by one ocean. Anthropologists like this map because they can easily see how people could walk out of Africa, as the current anthropological model shows, populate the Middle East, Europe, Asia, walk across the Bering Strait when it was connected, populate the Americas entirely on foot, so that you don't have these ideas of vast oceans separating us and them. You have a human, species, animal, if you will, just traveling around the globe, spending time in different places, becoming more or less melanated or adapting to their regions as they travel. But it really, he was trying to make a more accurate map, but by making a more accurate map, it allowed us to see interconnection and connectivity between human beings in a different way. Nationalistic boundaries are hard to even recognize on this map. And the classroom map, the Mercator map, uses the equator as its central line of reference. This map, which began in the 40s, uses the 90th longitudinal meridian. So this campus did not even exist. Buckminster Fuller hadn't even begun working for SIU until 1960, but the 90th meridian runs through here. So that old idea he had about doing a geoscope, a miniature Earth that could sit on a line of longitude, it really came full circle in a lot of different ways, where he was able to build this miniature Earth, position this over the 90th longitudinal meridian, which is the inspiration for this whole process. A geodesic dome, in a lot of ways, is this in reverse. You take a series of triangles and turn it back into a sphere. So, we're blessed to have this here, and, we love sharing it with people. And it's just a great way to, connect with big universal patterns. In addition to the connection with the 90th meridian, the geometry that informs all these different shapes that go into making the geodesic dome efficient reflects the way that nature builds. Currently the virus is on a lot of our minds. One of the donations that is come through recently is Bucky's personal library. So we've had to go through it and catalog all the books and look for any notations, and there's tons of journals on how virus shells are formed. And they are geodesic spheres, which is why they're so strong and so tough. The carbon-60 molecule is named after Buckminster Fuller because it is a little miniature geodesic dome. So this works as a space because it builds in the same way that nature builds. And it utilizes these units of geometry and proportions that are found from the subatomic level all the way out to the galactic level. And I'd love to get into that with you, but we just don't have time. But it really, okay, yeah, that'll be part 2, right? Maybe that's a good way to get you guys back here. Just to be continued. but that, Bucky a lot of times referred to God as universe, or possibly, or a source as the universe. And if you look long enough like he did and a lot of other people did who were termed geometers, geo would mean measure, earth, and then meter is measure, so geometry. It's all about measuring the earth. He literally did that. And that's understanding creation. You can start to see these things repeated over and over again to the point that you're getting clues as to what the Creator's will may be in the world. And if the things that we build and the things that we do are in alignment with those, then they're blessed. Like, in quite literally or in a material way, this structure works well because it's in alignment with those universal patterns. All too often, the things that we build are driven by other motivations, not being in alignment with nature, but rather opposition to it. The tower building impulse is one that may be more for conveying status or wealth. This building has a very different shape. It has a more nurturing shape. It ends up being a curve. He even proposed one for East St. Louis at the request of Catherine Dunham, African-American dancer from East St. Louis, and Y. Vetter Young. When the city needed a new kind of urban plan, he worked with a group of students at Washington University and to design a mile-wide geodesic dome. And again, it wouldn't need any internal support. There's no limit to the size a geodesic dome can be without internal support. You guys may be familiar with the one over in Wood River that's 120 feet tall and about 400 feet in diameter, built by the Union Tank Car Company in 1960 to service train cars in. And they picked a geodesic dome because there's no posts to bump into in there. You can turn a crane or 360 degrees with a train car on it and run into nothing. So, I mean, that's all because he sought to understand the way nature builds and reflect that. A couple different quotes that we have out front that I brought with me here just that reiterate that point. Buckminster Fuller said, "We need to find out what nature is doing so that we can be in harmony with her." Or in another one, he said, "I'm not trying to imitate nature, I'm trying to find out the principles that she's using." So this was really his lifelong quest. This globe I have over here is actually one of the items that was recently donated by Bucky's daughter Allegra to the center here, and it has the original pin marks of him drawing the lines around the globe that would be ultimately unwrapped and turned into the Dymaxion map. So there's more things like this that are coming into the space that'll help us to kind of share that worldview about understanding creation to understand the Creator. Again, Bucky came from a long line of Unitarians, but I think that his is as open and liberal and free as Unitarianism is, he still needed even more space than that, I think, to explore the world and figure out, what can one human being do if they dedicate their entire life to seeing what one life can do. He came to that conclusion. That's how he wanted to spend his life. In 1927, he kind of had a spiritual crisis of his own after his firstborn daughter had passed away from complications from polio and meningitis. He kind of blamed himself a little bit for that. And his second daughter was born, Allegra, who has been donating things to the center here in the Dome Home in Carbondale. She was born, and ever like a real just pragmatic type of a thinker. He was in a low spot and he thought, well, I can serve my family's needs financially best as if I were cashed in as a life insurance policy. So he was in Chicago. He was going to just wade into Lake Michigan, and a disembodied voice, this is to his telling, said that you don't belong to yourself, you belong to the universe. And if you're willing to throw your life away in this way, you should give it away in service to see what can one person do to nudge the trajectory of human evolution towards a more abundant and cooperative future. So, that's the legacy that we're working with here. And that's, I think it dovetails beautifully with what you guys are doing. I'd love to see you continue to come back here and connect with this whole tradition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now please join us, and you can remain seated, for the hymn Spirit of Life. And today we'll be taking up a special offering to donate to the good folks here at the center and to nurture their commitment to spirituality and sustainability on our shared planet. So if you're moved to do so, we've got a little donation basket over there. Our service is now concluded. Printed in your order of service are the words usually spoken in unison as we extinguish the chalice. Please join me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our lives till we're together again. Close. Oh, what?
If you don't mind, forward ahead. Oh, thank you. It's so good to see so many familiar faces. For those of you that don't know, I'm Robin Berkeley. I'm the president of the congregation. And number one, thank you so much for your time. And what a great message. And thank you again. So if we're open to this, maybe we could take a quarterly trip here every once in a while and figure out how we can combine our efforts, and mission and vision is all kind of in alignment there. Just a couple other things. It's stewardship time. I hate to say that, but it is. And so if you have not yet made a donation, I know that we would like to get that wrapped up. So if you're interested in making a pledge to the church, please let me know after the meeting really quickly, or you can send me an email somewhere. I think you all have my email address. Secondarily, we're meeting back at the church next week at 10 a.m., and the Right Reverend Dee Evans is going to be leading our service. One of our congregants has gotten her, she's graduated from Eden Seminary, and she's going to be leading our service next week. The week after that, we'll be turned in the pulpit and our annual meeting. If you cannot make the annual meeting face-to-face, we will have it Zoomed so that you can still participate in the meeting via Zoom if you need to do that. So just wanted to keep you in abreast of what we've got ahead of us in the next couple of weeks. And so thank you all for showing up. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, Peg, also for getting it all coordinated.
And now we'll enjoy a little bit more music, and then please do join us for a conversation and refreshments over there in that room. Thank you.